Hey guys, so welcome to this episode of Conversations with Kevin, and I have a very great guest on today, Nathan Kollerman. Hi Nathan, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Good, good. Nathan, I remember, we met last year, and your story really struck me, and the whole thing about the living full is about sort of living life on your terms, etc. And what I like to do here is document how ordinary people, just like you and I, can achieve things that we really want and really master what it is, whatever it is that we want to go after, by kind of mastering ourselves. And the thing that really stuck with me is your story from being a veteran and having this crazy injury that's completely changed your life, going through bouts of depression and handling that sort of thing. And I remember there was like some sort of court thing, and now you've kind of wound it up. Fast forward whatever amount of time that is. Well, I'm sure we'll get into that in a second. You then help the quality of other people's lives through movement, and that's so key as well, because that with our looking after our physical body, but also it's just how you present yourself. It's almost like it's like life is giving you a second chance. That's every time you're smiling, there's gratitude. I see when I look at you and the stuff that you put out, I see gratitude. I see like presence, and I see like fulfillment. That's what I see off you. So I wanted to share that with you as well, because I have not told you that before. But
No, you haven't, man. But that's amazing, man.
Yeah. And that's what comes out in your profile. So anybody that wants to follow you, then we'll talk about that a bit later. But it's definitely worth checking out. That is really inspiring what you do with the people that you work with. So with that being said, then, sir, can you give me? Can you give me a bit of your? No, my pleasure, my pleasure. Can you give me a bit of your? Can you talk us through your story and your journey? Then, what's got you up to here so far?
Yeah, man. So, I mean, throughout high school and everything else, it was kind of misplaced, because once I was going into high school, parents just had split, so I was kind of acclimating into just having friends for the first time after being bullied for years, and going into high school and desperately reaching out for belonging, desperately reaching out for almost like family, right? So eventually ended up getting mixed into the wrong crowds, ended up going through several addictions, several drugs, whether it be starting with just smoking weed, or getting into cocaine, getting into ecstasy, doing literally almost every single drug imaginable. And of course, being a kid, sometimes, well, I shouldn't say sometimes, it's not really natural, but the whole experimental factor was definitely there with me, just because it was more so I lived with a lot of depression and anxiety and what doctors would deem illnesses. So I always had thought that there was something wrong with me, that I didn't belong, that I wasn't good enough, that I had to do certain things to be accepted and to be good enough. So eventually getting into the wrong crowds, dire need for that acceptance, getting addicted to heroin eventually, and doing that for almost a year and a half, almost 2 years, I would say. And it wasn't until I had enlisted in the military and took that route for sobriety, ended up serving about 5.5 years from there. And after going in deployment, I had gotten into, bodybuilding, and kind of really discovered my first view on, fitness from what I thought it was. So getting out of the military, I started personal training. I, started replicating a lot of the different things that, I was doing with my clients, and not realizing how important, mobility or being functional is, and that's kind of how training has been for a long time. And that's how I trained. And, after about a year getting out of the military and then being at Lifetime, I ended up leaning on a granite counter and completely just tore my hand open. It snapped off, tore my hand open. I ended up tearing 4 tendons, severed my radial artery, completely destroyed my median nerve, had to get 2 back-to-back surgeries, and then going through 6 months of rehab. But, during that process, I really discovered, after going to the hospital and then telling me from my blood test results, that I had severe liver toxicity and acute kidney injury. Like, other than my hand, I was not healthy. I had no idea what I was truly doing to my body. And once I was in this rehabilitation phase, I realized how immobile I was, how uncomfortable I was. I couldn't really get up a flight of stairs without running out of breath, because at my highest weight, I was, 253 pounds, with doing very limited cardio, very limited mobility. And I just really wasn't taking care of myself in terms of longevity and sustainability. So kind of after my accident, I really just kind of dove in and tried to understand as much as I possibly could, because I didn't want to keep feeling that way. I didn't want to keep being in pain. And, living for almost a decade now, from starting in pain and trying to numb that pain over and over and over and over and over again, kind of brought me on this interesting path of self-discovery, not only from a physical state, but also tapping more into the mental and behavioral aspects, going through different transformational training programs, going to different seminars, reading all these different books, looking into energy work, really trying to understand what health and wellness really is. Because, and I said this to someone last week, that, putting the health back into fitness now, and truly understanding the importance and creating awareness and creating intention with intentional movement, and being able to understand exactly why is it what we do, and are we intentionally doing something that is going to get us to our desired result, or are we just blindly choosing over and over and over something, or are we blindly feeding into a habit that may not be correct? It may not be the right way or the best way to get to our result. People will typically skip a lot of different steps in terms of the continuum, and they'll try to jump to step 4 when they should be at step 1.
Sure.
Because of that, we see a lot of injuries. We see a lot of different aspects that may contribute to why we feel the way we do, when we should start with a discovery and with self-awareness, and taking my experience of, blindly and acting upon condition, and not having that internal awareness first, really brought me onto what I do now, where that is the first thing I'll do with people. Because without awareness, you cannot have intention. Without intention, you cannot have action. Without action, you cannot have a result. So that was more so shortened version, but, going from heroin addiction to the military and serving for 5.5 years until I got a medical discharge. Now I am 100% disabled from the VA. They tell me I'm 100%, and due to different physical conditions, mental stuff going on. And then basically being told I was broken, getting out, starting to do bodybuilding because I found something that made me feel complete, and suffering the injury, feeling broken again. And, venturing and creating what was new life, now new intention, to build that awareness, build that intention, and teach people, how to be mindful and how to be forgiving and how to be aware of what's really happening within their body, and how to translate that into movement and intentional movement at that, to, really keep people healthy and happy. You see people in the gym all the time, and, they may look healthy, but are they happy? Are they pain free? Are they going to bed and actually able to sleep without being in so much pain that they wake up in the middle of the night? Can they even sit on the ground and play with their kids? Can they do things like go on a hike, or can they go up a flight of stairs? A lot of people don't realize, what actually contributes to our happiness and being able to do the things we do, which is my mission now, for people, to teach people.
Sure. Yeah. It's interesting. I wanted to talk on, and it's funny how it's not until something restricts you do you realize how two things. The first thing, how much you needed that, or how much you do want that, and also what the stories you tell yourself when you do have some sort of injury or whatever. And that's this. You touch on some of the process is exactly the same, whether it's physical or it's mental. That starting point is the awareness, but most people want the fix first, because no, let's just get this. If I can get to, let's not deal with step 1, which is awareness. Let's deal with step 4, because that's where all the that's where the trophies are. That's where I will feel a certain way. And I think there's something around having that, that awareness, which means we have to really look at ourselves and think as warts and all, but it's what we make of that, where we are at that point in time. And it doesn't really matter, because it's almost having that reframe of, I need to use this where I am, regardless what it is, and it's okay, because now I have that awareness, and I want to be happy to have this awareness, because I can use this as a springboard to move on and make progress, rather than I'm only just here. I can't do this. I can't, what is the stuff that you can't do, or the stuff that you feel like you fall short of or not good at that point in time, Whereas people want to, if to use a physical analogy, they want to go straight to the handstand and walking around, rather than, can you even squat? So it's that type of thing. And we're all guilty of it, because some of the movements I've seen you do, I'm like, God damn! And I tend to catch myself, because I'm like, I could never do that. I'm like, how the hell do you know? You probably could. Do you know what I mean? But are you willing to start from where you are and then build it up? And and that's the thing that we always, as human beings, wrestle with. We don't want to start at the beginning. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the handstand. Dude, I never thought that I'd be able to do that. I was 253 pounds. I used to look at people doing that stuff, and I'd be like, oh, that's stupid. That's not even, there's no reason for that.
Yeah. You make excuses up. Yeah.
Not until you start, attempting and trying and failing and trying and failing and trying and failing and learning different ways to just, okay, well, now I'm realizing, okay, my legs might be kicking over too much. And it's almost like you have to fail so many times in order to do that. And it kind of makes me think, how often do a lot of people do this on an everyday basis? How, I may attempt to do this handstand and I may fall, I may, not have my balance right. I may not have my hand placement right. I may not set my shoulders right. I may not erect my body right. But, it makes me think, like you said, these stories that kind of people bring up, or these self-limiting beliefs that may not be true, start coming into the equation. How many times are people trying things over and over and over, like people in pain? How many times are they going to a chiro or physical therapy, or going, in London for, physio work? How many times are they doing things over and over and over and nothing's working? What kind of effect would that have on the mental state, mental aspect, on, the self-limiting belief and the stories and the rackets that people tell themselves, and how does that carry over to their lives every single day?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and it is. I mean, how did you? Because this is very much a personal journey of yourself first, isn't it? And then going on to help others. How did you, from the 250 pound guy, how did you find what you found, and what was the kind of the journey for you then? What was that sort of process like, and how long did it take as well for you?
Yeah.
How long are we talking? Yeah.
I mean, after bodybuilding for 3.5 years, I would say, I did 6 shows. Ended up doing a national show. Ended up doing another organization's pro qualifier. Got a pro card with them, and then transitioned more so from the physique to bodybuilding. And that's when I just blew up. But after my hand injury, I had about 6 months of rehab, and then after about 4 months of rehab, they did a surgery, a tenolysis, to get all the scar tissue out of my tendons and everything else, so I could actually close my hand, which
Ouch.
I still can't really do fully, and I can't feel these two fingers still.
Right.
So I'm kind of still on this journey, I would say.
Okay.
But being at that stage, it took, I would say, because the accident happened in March, I would say, a year and a half, of just complete work of, 6 months of rehabilitation, and then another year of exploration and finding things like DNS, which retrains the neurology of how our system stabilizes when we move, and finding things like animal flow, which bring us back to our primal states of movement, and how can we incorporate mobility, flexibility, stability, coordination, and strength all within one practice, and how can we really unlock that creative side of us again. And that's probably the most powerful tool that I've found, is what can we do with creativity? Can we bring back this childlike mentality of movement? And, can we start finding different ways to feel? Because if I'll tell somebody to get down into a deep ape, you'll find out really quick how miserable they really feel, because it's like, oh, my hips, or they can't get down. And it's bad as a discovery process of itself. And being able to just sit and crouch, small things like that. Those are probably the first things where I started was, okay, well, I want to sit and do a deep squat first. Okay, to do that, I really need to work on my ankle mobility. I really need to start working on my hips. And it was almost like I was kind of just guiding myself on the personal journey of discovering, okay, I need to be mobile and I need to be stable, because I am neither right now. So transitioning from bodybuilding and rehab and going into this journey of functionalism, starting with the mobility, the animal flow, getting into DNS, I think I've just found certain tools over time, because training wise, I've always really specialized with corrective exercise, and I've been training since about July, August 2015. So I've always specialized with that type of work, but the normal corrective exercise was always, physical therapy based practice that was translated into training.
Right.
And what I noticed is, starting to implement these techniques that I've learned over the years training, I realized, okay, it's helping a little bit with the mobility, but things keep coming back. Right. And then I discovered that our mobility, our movement, is not so much a physical or structural limitation. It's more so a neurological, even emotional or physiological, situation, to where we need to really identify where are these patterns coming from, what is really restricting us. And even in the therapist world, there's a saying called that unresolved emotional issues reside in our tissues. And that brought about the emotional factor, which is why in my journey, I've also incorporated not only movement with DNS, with, animal flow, with steel mace movement, and just movement in its own, and functional training on its own. I kind of discovered as well through this process that I had to find what was really holding me back. I had to find out what was really causing the trauma, right? Which gave me symptoms of different traumas and everything else. And, before we started, recording, really going into, the causation, and really tackling the root of where it all started. So I went through programs like Landmark and MITT, which are, transformational training programs. There's another one out here called Psi. But they really dig deep onto, where is this coming from? Is this coming from how you were raised? Was this coming from your mother, your father? Was this, something that was conditioned and ingrained in you at a very young age? And how can we identify what that moment in time was, and really truly come to closure with it?
Sure.
And really resolving that emotional block. So from the neurology and movement standpoint, from the emotional standpoint, and from me having to also learn my body from a physiological standpoint and change my nutrition, and to realize like, okay, like I can't really eat a lot of inflammatory foods such as dairy or gluten. So, to kind of round your questions answer into one big bundle, I would say, just having that discovery process on my own personal journey of, finding what was mentally and emotionally blocking my body from achieving what I thought was never possible. And identifying from a nutrition standpoint that, eating 6 meals a day every 2.5 to 3 hours probably isn't the best way to do things. I need to find a more healthy approach other than just exhausting my digestive system, exhausting my hormones, and found, intermittent fasting, and found different strategies to truly achieve what I really wanted. And then taking that neurological approach to movement and saying, okay, well, we need to start retraining the brain and starting to retrain the body how to stabilize itself and how to move itself, starting with how we learn to develop as children on our back, breathing on our belly, and moving through our entire developmental cycle of how we learn to move as children all the way up until we stand and walk, but doing that the right way. So I'd say now having that experience and being able to translate that into my coaching and translating that to people, a lot of what I'm doing now isn't just, assessing the movement and retraining the movement and teaching people how to move. It's actually sitting down and talking to them and figuring out, okay, what else is going on in your life? Like because you need to let it out, you need to do something. And that's, I'll even refer my clients out to trauma therapists. I'll refer them out and I'll, tell them, hey, look into these courses. This is what helped me. So it allows me now to help them at a much deeper level.
Yeah, for sure.
And really communicate that message of putting the health back into fitness, but using different strategies in terms of mental behavior and emotional health, I should say. And then going into, our physiological states and our hormones and our nutrition, and then, the movement side, and having those three pillars essentially will create something that person never thought was possible. So it's giving them not only hope, but it's giving them a new life. It's getting their life back.
Yes, for sure. I love that, man. I love that. And it's so interesting that I love the fact that there are a few, and it seems to be, there are a few people doing this now, but to be just a PT or something like that just doesn't cut it. And it's the same for me. If you're just a coach or just a hypnotherapist, you need to look at the whole thing is in its entirety as a holistic approach. And this is why I'm so passionate about what we do here, because I like featuring people like yourself or whatever, and you're coming from a physical standpoint, but we're talking the same language, right? Because everyone understands it's the whole being that you're dealing with, not just one part. And to get the optimum performance from anybody, all of these little factors need to be addressed,
Right.
There's a thing that you touched on just now, which is, and it's really interesting, and I'm enamored by young people, children, especially pre-7-year-olds, that kind of toddler age, and they're exploring and they're doing things, and you see their movement. And it was something so from a mindset perspective, especially in that young age, they're more of a blank canvas. They've got less of all those beliefs and all that shit dumped on top of them. So there's less layers just to really strip back. And I think there's a lot we can learn as adults from just the observation of young people, because it's like, life, we take ourselves far too serious. It should be more more playful, and just seeing it and explore and, try and fail, trial and fail. It doesn't mean, you're not a loser. You're not an idiot. You can hear the self-talk. When you fail at something, you think, oh, okay, just do it again. And I think that's a lot of the thing, is being comfortable with not only failing, but also being uncertain that you're not going to get the outcome that you want straight away, but it's still worth doing,
Right.
Yeah. And for you, personally, what are the key things that you learned on your journey then? Well, so far, obviously, because it never ends, does it?
No, it really doesn't. Wow, that's a good question. But, I'd say three main things I think I learned on my journey would be, one, that it is a journey. It is not about the result. Because being mobile, getting out of pain, moving right, feeling healthy, living your very best life from a physical standpoint is a process. It is a journey. And, the first main takeaway would be to, truly learning how to disassociate myself from a result and being able to take that association and redirect it onto enjoying the experience. And how I translate this would be to, say how many people attach themselves to a desired goal, right? Look at, we just finished with New Year's resolutions, right? And I say finish because now is the time that people will normally stop.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. Yeah.
But how many times do we set out to achieve a certain goal, but try to change 95 different things in our life to get there at one point in time? And I'm sure you already know this, but statistics and data don't lie.
No.
You try to change any more than 3 habits and it's a bad day. Hell, you try to change 3 habits, you only have about 5 to 10% success rate there.
Sure.
And that's just from the statistical point of view, but realizing like, okay, I need to just do one thing at a time. And I truly need to enjoy this experience. I need to learn the process. I need to be present. I need to have that awareness to focus on myself, to do only one thing at a time and sequentially building habits over time. And that's exactly what we do in terms of behavior. And that's what I do with movement. I don't just look at somebody and say, hey, you have to change your foot, your knee, your ankle. You need to change your elbow, your hip, your neck. And there will be times where I position people like that, but I'm not telling them like, hey, you need to start being mindful of this from day one. No, maybe day one, it's okay. I just want you to focus on breathing low into your stomach. Stop breathing with your chest. Stop getting into this sympathetic, very stressful situation in your body. Let's bring that down. Let's push that low, and let's, truly bring yourself to a point where we can retrain the respiratory patterns first, because that's where it starts.
Sure. Yeah.
And just identifying, it's being attached to the process, not so much the result, and communicating that. I can't communicate that enough. Like I can't tell you how many times I repeat that on a daily basis, and that's probably my main takeaway from, my journey in itself. And the second one I would say is to be gracious, be gracious to your body, be mindful of your body. We don't take enough time to give ourselves the graciousness that we may really deserve, whether that be 10 minutes of meditation, whether it be 10 minutes of stretching, whether it be just 10 minutes of really giving to ourselves, giving to our body, so that way our body can just heal, right? Because we carry around our stress. We don't do anything for ourselves anymore. We tend to always want to do for other people other than ourselves. We stop taking care of ourselves because being, service providers and service-based industries that we are in, we tend to see ourselves bending our schedules for other people. We tend to see ourselves changing our rates to fit the other person's financial situation, changing our schedules to match theirs. And it's not a bad thing we do those things, but we need to also take care of ourselves.
Sure.
And I realized a lot through this process. I wanted to give and give and give and give and give, but I didn't want to receive. I didn't want to give to myself. So I think one of the most powerful things that I've experienced is that for me to truly give 100% of myself to others, I have to be able to give 100% of myself to me.
Sure.
and giving myself a time of gratitude, giving myself the time to be gracious and mindful and contributing to my own health first. So I think that's what the second would be for sure. And, you know, a third takeaway I would say would be to truly value, you know, what you have versus what you don't have. You know, I tell people all the time, you know, you have a body, you have 2 limbs under your hips, and you've got 2 limbs coming out of your torso. I was like, it could be a lot worse. And, you know, there are people out there that have, you know, amputations and whatnot like that, but it's also being thankful for what those people have as well, you know, because those limitations shouldn't stop you from achieving your best self. And we can attain that not only from a physical standpoint, from a mental, emotional, again, going into these different pillars that we have that contribute to the way we feel.
Yeah, sure.
You know, but being thankful for the things we do have and being able to move through the motion that we do have, other than defeating ourselves and telling ourselves over and over, well, I can't do that. I'm not capable of bringing my arm behind my back. I'm not capable of lifting my leg up to 90 degrees from the ground. I'm not capable of doing a correct squat, and just beating ourselves down, you know, kind of like you said, you know, we kind of just throw these thoughts into our head, and we kind of just make up these stories that we develop based on what we can and cannot do versus really truly appreciating what we have. That's almost like people saying, well, I'll be happy when I have a Maserati. Or you can be happy with the car that you have, considering you can drive to work today. Right. And seeing that as our bodies as well. Well, I really wish that I had a 6-pack, and I'll be happy when, you know, I can do a full squat. Okay. Or you can be happy that you're even on this journey as it is. You should be happy and appreciative that you haven't completely collapsed and broken, you know, you're able to work towards it, you know, and I have those conversations with, you know, myself and with people every day is to truly appreciate what I have versus what I don't have. And that kind of circles back around to the first being, you know, enjoy the experience, enjoy the process, be present instead of focusing so far on the result, on the future that hasn't even occurred.
Yeah, sure.
You know, so all three kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah. They mesh together really well, don't they? Yeah. Yeah. That's nice. Oh man. I told you, I knew it. That's why I knew I wanted to hit record from the get-go, man. I knew it. I knew you'd come with some fire today, man. I really appreciate it.
I love it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, this is great. So, so where can people reach you? How can they get out to you?
Right. So I would say my bigger platform is Instagram. That's where I usually put most of my educational videos. It's where I put a lot of, you know, a lot of mindset, you know, and of course sharing my own life as well, you know, both with my relationship with my children, but it would be at Nathan Kollerman, which is the Instagram. And they can also, you know, look me up on Facebook. I have a personal Facebook, and then the New Intention Health and Wellness Facebook page is where I'm going to be starting to migrate a lot of my Instagram content into. So if people don't have Instagram, that'd be, you know, a secondary source for people to learn and get educated. But also the New Intention Instagram as well. It's the New Intention _health_wellness. And it's not very active right now, but I'm getting some content and stuff like that developed. So I'm kind of really trying to shape the brand and transition because I just rebranded.
Cool.
So I'm really trying to position the brand into kind of what we're talking about, into the mental, physiological, and of course, neurological information for there. So I'd say the Instagram and Facebook platforms are probably the best.
Cool. Thank you very much. So I've got, I just want to, I'll do this now. So I just want to, again, I kind of acknowledged you at the beginning, but I wanted to do it again because, you can see it's quite clear that you are, and it's really important. And this word gets played out a lot, but I'm going to use it anyway. Authentic, and you walk another word would be a bit congruent. So you walk your talk, and you're very much. Okay, fair enough. You would, especially in your realm, you would be the leader, but you're also very much the student as well. And you passing on that you're very generous with your knowledge and passing on those things as well. And you can see that you've gone through your own personal journey. And I think this is really key for most people, because there's in the personal development movement, health and wellness movement, there can be people want to kind of dictate, or they're not really living up to their true who they say they are as a persona. But obviously meeting you personally and seeing your content and speaking to you a couple of times now, there's a level of consistency that only means that you are who you say you are, if that makes sense. So I appreciate you for that, sir. I appreciate you for that, because it's I wouldn't say it's rare, but it can be tricky, So
yeah,
thank you for that, man.
Oh, thank you, man. And it's crazy that I'm thinking about this, and I appreciate the gratitude and the acknowledgement. But just a thought just occurred. I was like, it's kind of crazy that we have to thank people and acknowledge people for being authentic.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it does. Yeah. Yeah.
Things don't always work that way, and I think people like you and me are really starting to convey the message that being your authentic, being your genuine, being your best self is the only way you can really, offer what you do to the world, and that's the only way you can make a difference.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Longer term,
people like us are going to make a difference. But I just wanted to throw in a little sidebar. I think every time someone will acknowledge or thank me, I'm like, it's crazy that you actually have to thank me for that, right?
Yeah. That's true.
Makes us think like, ooh,
wow. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much, man.
My pleasure.
As always, man. I love getting into these with you. Just from the couple times that we talked when you were down here, and how we've been talking over time. I think as we go along, we're going to start also developing a lot of great, more powerful, and we're going to start manifesting some pretty amazing things. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I believe so. I can feel it too. I'm excited for that. So I've got one last question for you, and then I'll let you go about your day. So I always ask everybody, all the guests, so what does living full mean to you?
Ooh, I like this one. So living full, I think living full, what that would mean to me is really living and being presently your best self, and not only living and being your best self in that present moment, but living and being full of joy in what you're doing in your relationships, doing what you love in your job, with your business, with your friendships, and really being full of gratitude. And being gracious for those things that you love in your life, and being full and one and complete with yourself.
Sure.
Would essentially be what I think living full would be.
Nice, brother. That's awesome. Thank you very much, Nathan Kollerman. That was great. Thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to our next encounters, our next conversation. There's always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Sir. Thank you, man. It was a pleasure, man. And I appreciate you taking some time today and allowing me to share. Really do truly appreciate it.
No, cool. No problem at all. So on to the next one.